Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen, our second rest day podcast. We don't have a guest as exciting as Leonard Kemner for you today, but we will be going through in detail what we expect from GC in the last 5 stages or 6 stages, and the green jersey as well. That's a real competition this year as well, which is really fortunate. Makes it much more exciting on some of those transitional stages. We'll also be talking about Tirreno Adriatico Stage 8, which was a 10k individual time trial that happened, just finished before we started recording, and a lot of the World Championships ITT favourites were in that race. So we'll be talking about whether there's any learnings from that will apply for the World Championships race, which is apparently World Champs are in about 10 days, Benji. So I don't know when we're going to get sleep before then, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be any rest for us soon. What did you get up to on your rest day?
Actually, I had a pretty good day. I made, 3 videos for my own channel, my personal channel, and I went for a ride today. So it's been a while since I had a time for a proper bike ride. And yeah, it's pretty flat because it's Belgian, but still, I really enjoyed it.
That's enough personal stuff from you. We're going to get straight into the GC. The current positions are Roglic first. He's 40 seconds ahead of Tadej Pogacar, the 2 Slovenian riders, 1 and 2. Rigoberto Urán, third on GC, 90 seconds behind Primož Roglic, 50 seconds behind Pogacar. Miguel Angel Lopez, 11 seconds behind Urán in 4th. Yates, another 30 seconds behind Miguel Angel Lopez, 2 minutes behind Roglic. Port is 2 minutes 13 back, 6th, 10 seconds behind Yates. He obviously lost a fair bit of time in that crosswinds. Landa, 2 minutes 16 back, just 3 seconds behind Port. Mas, another minute behind, 3:15. Quintana salvaged 9th, 5 minutes behind. And Tom Dumoulin is 4 seconds behind Quintana, rounding out 10th. Now, I think the main thing we want to talk about is obviously Primož Roglic, maybe not the strongest GC rider in this race, but he's got the strongest team with Jumbo Visma. Tadej Pogacar just looking like a complete animal at the moment, but doesn't have the team. What do you think, Benji? You were talking to me offline, and I've been talking with other people offline. If you're Jumbo Visma on this rest day, what is the overall sort of overarching strategy which you would have for the next few mountain stages? We've got 3 mountain stages back to back to back. None of them are crazy like Giro stage, mountain stage, I don't think, but still 3 hard mountain stages. What are you saying if you're the Jumbo Visma DS to get rid of Pogacar, or are you happy with that 40-second gap?
Unfortunately, I think they are happy with that 40-second gap, and I think Roglic said that in an interview this morning. So what I think they will do, I'm not sure it matters much, because Roglic basically said that he is happy with defending this 40 seconds and moving this into La Planche de Belfield time trial. I would not be so certain of that. I think that on Col d'Alors we will see Pogacar attack a lot to try and get that 40 seconds down to a lower margin, or even overtake Roglic if remotely possible. But it's going to be hard because you've got a team that will probably ride onto Col d'Alors the same way they did on Grand Colombier. I think it's a less steep climb. It is pretty long as well, though. So in general,
it's about 20
going to
k's
be
at 7.5%, but not the same ramps and undulating. A little bit undulating, but not as rampy as the climb we had yesterday.
Yeah, but I think in the last 2 kilometers there's also like a ramp of 20%. So it's going to be special either way, and it's going to be kind of good for Roglic as well. We mentioned before that it's a very lengthy climb. It's the only stage that goes above altitude, above 2,000 meters, and because of that, it was the opportunity of the Colombians to strike back, but they're pretty much gone. We also have Urán and Lopez in 3rd and 4th, but I'm not exactly seeing them drop Roglic and Pogacar at any point in the coming week. Nonetheless, I'm open to having my expectations subverted. Nonetheless, I am expecting Pogacar to be the offensive rider on these climbs. In regards to what you said about my strategy, if I was Roglic, I'd play it defensively, and unfortunately that's how I think they will do it, because we've seen yesterday on stage 15 that on the last second, Roglic did not have anything to respond in that sprint to Pogacar, and he was clearly unhappy about losing the stage. So I think that he's going to play it rather defensively towards Pogacar, and if he sees a weakness, then you can strike, but I don't think he's going to be seen attacking Pogacar too early on in this whole Tour de France victory.
Well, here's what I think they should do and should try to do. Is it probably 80% chance it won't work? They should try and put Tom Dumoulin in a break on the Col de la Loze stage, because Jumbo Visma's strength is that they have the strongest team by far. Like, it's not even close. There's literally not a second team, because Ineos, apart from Kwiatkowski, Ineos haven't been there this Tour de France. Unfortunately, it's a real shame. Like, I'm not a Ineos fanboy by any means, but I wanted to see a real battle of the heavyweights, and that hasn't happened. And it definitely made the stage yesterday a lot more boring. Like Egan Bernal dropping, that's not actually what we want as fans. I think we all want to see everyone at peak performance. But with Jumbo Visma being so strong, it doesn't really help Roglic. It'd actually be better if they had like Ineos' team last year in 2019 Tour de France, not as strong as Jumbo Visma's team, but they had two genuine leaders. So when Geraint Thomas attacked up the road, other GC candidates had to respond. Whereas if Tom Dumoulin attacks Pogacar in the last 5 kilometers of the Col de la Loze stage, does he really need to chase him back? Will it probably be Miguel Angel Lopez and the other guys who are in 5th, 6th, 7th positions chasing him back? Whereas, yeah, I think they will. I mean, from what I've learnt watching the Tour de France over the years, it is that people will ride. They will try and shut down the 10th rider on GC if they're in 9th, like Formula One. So if I was Jumbo Visma, I'd do something crazy, because I don't trust Roglic in the ITT. I'll come back to that. But yeah, I would try and put him in a break with one of their route. Maybe Armand Grandal Janssen, use him to try and get him into the break, and really force UAE hopefully UAE to chase. Hopefully the other riders like Port and Astana and co will let that happen. I doubt they will, because they'll be worried about Dumoulin as well. So, but that's what I would try on the Col de la Loze stage, because that would put a lot of pressure on Pogacar. It would maybe allow Roglic to have someone to springboard to. Tom Dumoulin is looking really, really good, actually, compared to where he was maybe in Dauphiné, where he's looking really good. He's looking like a genuine GC contender again, based on his long, long pull yesterday. But the reason I say they shouldn't be so comfortable with Roglic just having a small gap is because, anything can happen in the stage 20 individual time trial. He could miss a corner. He could have a mechanical, even if he is the strongest rider. So if you have the strongest team and you've been dominating for 3 weeks straight, and you've had opportunities to gain more time, and you have the team to put pressure on in these next 4 stages, then I don't think they should rest on their laurels. And Pogacar is just not someone like you haven't, Benji, because you called him to win the Tour, but generally he's been underestimated. And he's even been underestimated by Jumbo Visma during this Tour, and Primoz Roglic himself. Primoz Roglic didn't chase him on Col de Peyresourde. Benji, if that was Egan Bernal attacking for the second time on Peyresourde, do you think Roglic lets him go?
Yeah, no, he would not let him go. And I indeed think that everybody kind of underestimated Pogacar, but let's be honest here, he was not up to standards at the Dauphiné, and because of that, people didn't see him as a potential favorite for the Tour de France. The reason I saw him as a potential favorite was mainly because I was looking for riders that were very offensive and could attack even if there is a train that is marching away. And I believe that Pogacar was one of the riders that could do that. I also had a bit of it wasn't like a purely calculated prediction, because I was looking for one of the riders that could oppose Roglic, and he's the only rider that I have seen do that this year. And that is referring to the national championships on both the road race and the time trial. They were both really close. On the road race, Roglic beat him, but it was pretty much the same way he does it usually in the last kilometer. And I was looking for a rider that could hang on the climbs and potentially lose it in those sprints or something. But Pogacar showed that he grows in a race in the Vuelta last year, and he was better in the third week. I think he had one bad day in the third week last year of La Vuelta. And because he grows in the race, I thought he would grow more and more into the Tour de France this year as well, which seems to be the case. Now, I did expect much more of a Bernal and such on the larger mountain stages like stage 15 and the upcoming 17, but we can't expect too much from Bernal anymore. I think he's already said that his Tour de France is over, which I find a bit meh. Obviously, he lost so much time that he's not going to do GC anymore, but if the week before you keep hammering in the media that you're going to keep on fighting whether you're first, second, fifth, or like 10th or anything, and then you give up the first time you drop properly, well, the second time actually, because he also dropped on Puy-Marie, but on Grand Colombier he dropped again and he just gave up when he was on 3 minutes. So I feel like he is weaker mentally than his competition as well. And yeah, I was a bit surprised to hear him say that his tour is just over already. Because, yeah, if you're keeping up the statements that you're going to keep on fighting, you can't just do that, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. And some people said we were too harsh on him yesterday. And, this is the Tour de France. This ain't a kid's under-8 swimming carnival where you hand out participation ribbons at the end. This is the Tour de France. You probably are aware that is the race. But they're getting paid millions of euro. Millions. You got to remember Bernal, he put this pressure on himself. He picked this team. He said, I want to be the sole leader for this year's tour. And now Grant Thomas went off to Giro. I mean, Thomas might not have been good enough, but hey, that still happened. So when you do that, you got to back it up. And that doesn't mean you have to win. It's hard to win the tour. But for anyone, even if they are on Ineos, but to even just give away a top 10 opportunity sort of yesterday, I found disappointing as well. I think you can compare and contrast what happened with Quintana. The way Quintana looked terrible too. He looked unwell. I've never seen him so pale, but he just kept fighting and he's 9th on GC. And if Quintana has a really good day on Col de la Loze, I'm sure he can, if he has a special Quintana day, he can get back to 6th or whatever and still keep working. It's an admirable performance from a guy on a pro-continental team. So, yeah, I agree with what you said about Bernal, Benji. I think, Kwiatkowski, guy, someone like him working so hard, it was just a bit disappointing to see that. Now, I'm sure he'll come back for the Vuelta, etc. But I already thought there were a few warning signs with Bernal intra-race, actually, at the Dauphiné. If you remember that stage too, there was one moment that stuck out in my mind. It was when he attacked quite early off the Jumbo Visma train, and Sepp Kuss just reeled him in nose breathing with 2Ks to go, and Bernal looked back at Kuss and then shook his head, and I was like, man, he's not confident here, and he seemed like not to be in a great mental place. So yeah, he said all the right things, I guess, after the race yesterday, but I tend to prefer to look at what's happened on the road, and yeah, but anyway, we don't need to harp on that too much. Hopefully, I don't know if he'll go for stage wins or what will happen. He probably hasn't lost enough time on GC at this point to be getting into a really a break where they gain 10, 12 minutes or something. And that was a problem for Adam Yates yesterday. But yeah, if I was Jumbo Visma, I would keep putting pressure on Tadej Pogacar. Even if you're using Sepp Kuss, if he's going to be the sweeper on the wheel of Primoz Roglic, just keep letting Kuss lose the wheel of Roglic. Do that 5 times a stage. Over 3 mountain stages, that's 15 times. Even if you don't gain any extra time on Pogacar, then he'll still be more tired going into the ITT than he would have been otherwise. But yeah, let's go to the fight for the 3rd position on GC. Now, it might be a bit presumptuous, us thinking that 1 and 2 is already settled. Pogacar could have a bad day, Roglic could have a bad day, but as it stands, it looks like a pretty good fight for 3rd on GC. Who is your pick to come 3rd on GC now, Benji, as it stands?
It's a bit of a double-sided sword because I've got 2 names in that top 10 that I see having the potential of jumping to 3rd in the current positions. And I'm basing this off the performances that they have and the fact that there's a time trial coming up. Now, firstly, we've got riders that can do a time trial. I'm looking at Port and Uran here. Lopez is less than that. Yates sometimes very inconsistent in that, and not always that good as a Poet and an Uran in a time trial. Landa and Mas, nah, that's not going to happen. Mas is not terrible though, but I feel like he's a solid gap behind compared to the other two, so I'm not really counting him for that. And then you got Dumoulin. Now, if we have to compare, Dumoulin is on 5 minutes, so I potentially see him jumping up to fifth, to be honest. That's 3 minutes. I believe that's possible on Alanda. I believe that's potentially possible on Yates might be hard, and Mars as well. So it's going to be a tough one, but he can at least jump up to 8th, I think, in a time trial. But I feel like he's going to gain time on some of the other top 10 favorites on the Col d'Alo stage because he's going to be one of the last men of Roglic, and he doesn't give up the moment he drops. So I think he's going to potentially drop a Quintana once again if Quintana's in the same kind of day that he had on Colombier. Grand Colombier. I shouldn't switch those climbs around. They're different. Nonetheless, in regards to the actual third position, Uran or Port, and it's looking more like it's going to be Port to me because Port has gained time on the previous climbing stage, which means that he might do that once again this week. Might not be much, might be 10 seconds, might be 12 seconds, whatever. Port is a better time trialist, in my opinion, than Uran is. The difference is not huge. So I believe that he can take up to half a minute on Uran in that time trial, and if he gains 15 seconds in the upcoming mountain stage, then Port will be above Uran if he takes that half a minute. So I'm going to say Port gets third and Uran gets fourth.
Yeah, I'm obviously legally obliged to agree with you because I'm in Australia. So, yeah, I am picking Port for that third position. Maybe it's with my heart rather than my head, but he's looked the third strongest climber in the race. He dropped, you saw yesterday, he was looking behind him. He was happy to have the two Slovenians on his wheel, and he was looking to see if he was dropping Miguel Angel Lopez. He did so, and as he kept the pressure on. So, and then Uran was another step behind him. He was even further distanced on the climb. So if it wasn't for that crosswind stage, Port he'd be ahead of Uran, right? And he's going to probably put at least 20 seconds into him in the time trial, you'd think. And he's just climbing way better than him. Now, maybe the Col d'Alo stage over altitude could be a different kettle of fish, but I'm not really sure Uran is that level at the moment. I'd kind of expect Quintana to more somehow dial back the clock and have a really good performance there than otherwise. But something you just mentioned, Benji, about Tom Dumoulin, and I think we disagreed with it. I disagreed with Leonard Kemner about it, and how Tom Dumoulin, they burnt him right on the Peresud stage, and I think we all agreed that it didn't make sense that they burnt him in that scenario because Roglic didn't attack, so it made no real sense that he cooked himself. But I never really looked at Dumoulin as a genuine GC threat for this year's Tour de France. I didn't think he was up to form. I'm clearly wrong on that. I think that was wrong. He's lost sort of 50 seconds here, 30 seconds there, and 50 seconds here in situations like Peresud where he's pulled really hard and then dropped, like yesterday. Were it not for that, he'd be right up there in 5th or 6th with a time trial coming up in stage 20 that would destroy these guys in normal circumstances. So I think I was wrong actually, because I wasn't wrong in that I did say that they shouldn't have used him that way on Peresud, but by using him primarily as a super domestique, they've taken away that second leader option that they could have used as a threat against Tadej Pogacar. And if he was 2.5 minutes back, they don't need to send him into a break. They could use him as an attacker for these next 3-4 stages, and he's definitely grown into the race. So, yeah, do you think Dumoulin is genuine GC contender level, Benji, or do you think there's actually a big drop off in level from Landa to everyone below him?
I will leave out for now as the cause that Dumoulin's GC is ruined because he pulled so hard on the Portobello that Dumoulin was thinking that he was weak, while I'm pretty sure everybody in the group was hurt at that moment. So I believe that Wout van Aert killed his own leader by accident in that way. Not literally killed, but they killed the possibility of Dumoulin as GC leader. Now, the thing about it is that Dumoulin is often seen in the Dutch media as the guy that is honest about everything, and he's honest when he's not good enough, but he sometimes says that too early. And because of that, he straight up bottled his GC. Not by accident, not on purpose, of course, but he thought he was not good enough. He said that to his team, which is admirable, to be honest. A lot of riders would not do that, and then you'd have a situation like Quintana and Movistar last year, where he did not tell his DS that he was feeling weak and did not help the team that way. So, yeah, I don't want to go back and dial back to Movistar problems, though, but it's a bit of a counterpoint to what Dumoulin is doing. Dumoulin is, well, in my opinion, admirable in the way that he has dealt with feeling not good enough on the climbs, and he gave himself up for his team, which is what he is technically paid to do. So on paper, I am admiring that, while I do think that he could have been much higher. As in, he lost 50 seconds on that stage on Portobello. I think if he didn't lose that, well, he probably would have lost that on that stage because he didn't look good that stage. Not unless he worked a lot, so maybe it would have been like 30 seconds, something like that. So let's say he was closer and was on 450. Now, on some of the other stage, he's worked a lot and lost probably about 40 seconds, 50 seconds in that. So he would have been on 4 minutes. Worst case scenario if he was going for himself. And that brings him into a ninth position, which he'd probably be higher if he wasn't working for Roglic, but this is a worst case scenario I'm talking about. So on that note, he would be able to jump over Mas, Landa, or maybe not in the time trial because, well, the difference is 2 minutes. It's going to be close there, but I still think it's remotely possible. Yates, he would probably pass. Lopez, he would pass, to be honest. So he'd be jumping onto 15 GC. And yeah, he's not there now, which means that it was very much possible that he would be a very important factor in GC if he went for himself. And they could have played that more because now you've got a situation where, as you say, Dumoulin could go up on the road and such, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think Jumbo is pretty clear in the fact that Roglic is their leader, and they've got their strategy that has worked so far in defending Roglic's yellow and him not losing time against his competitors, except for like a bonus second or 4 against Pogacar, which is obviously not great, but it's on paper good because you're still in yellow with 40 seconds ahead. And on paper, you've got better time trial skills than Pogacar, which we should talk about later on, by the way. But I've got the feeling
let's do that now. Let's do that now.
Okay. Now, you've got the time trial in the ITT National Championships. We've got a mountain time trial. We've been saying that's a very identical parkour. It's a bit different. You've got that ITT NC that is pretty much climbing all over. If I look at the profile, it's a shorter time trial. While if you look at the stage 20 time trial to Planche de Belfi, you've got 30 kilometers of, well, flat parts and a few rolly hills in there, but they're not too noticeable. Some sections of 2-3%, a bit of a downhill section of that same gradient. And then towards the end, it's Planche de Belfi, which is a steep climb towards the end. So Roglic and Pogacar on that climb are going to be relatively equal. Now, the section before that is what's going to define it for me, and whether they go for a bike change, which I think they will. You would probably have more knowledge about the bike change mathematics because you seem to be pretty good at knowing when it's, well, a valuable asset to have the bike change or not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, I think, the day before Planche de Belfi time trial. I'm going to be making a video advocating for why they need to do a bike change. But just quickly, Benji, if Pogacar if he's 10 seconds behind Roglic on GC going into that time trial, how are you feeling? Do you think Pogacar will win?
It's going to be a really good time trial. That's
Okay.
most of what
That's
I
a
can
non-answer.
say. And that's a non-answer,
All right,
but I have to stick by my pick, though. I have to stick by Pogacar. Even if he ends up losing that time trial, I have to stick by him and support him there because I said he was going to win the Tour de France, and it's the last day he can change it. So if he goes in there with 10 seconds, I've got hope.
Okay, youth classification jersey. Pogacar is 2 minutes and 35 ahead of Mas. Bernal is 7 minutes 45 behind Pogacar. If Tadej Pogacar doesn't crack or have like a bad mechanical crash or whatever, it looks like he's got that wrapped up. Enric Mas had a lovely day on stage 15, but he certainly doesn't have anything on Tadej Pogacar. The other main jersey competition we want to talk about is Sam Bennett leading the points classification, the green jersey, ahead of Peter Sagan right now. He's on 269 points. Let me do some quick maths. That's 45 points ahead of Peter Sagan. Matteo Trentin is actually snapping at the heels of Sagan. He's on 189, so he's only 35 points behind Peter Sagan. Now, the odds have sort of made it a two-horse race. It's got Bennett at about $1.50, $1.60, so that's a 60% chance of winning, 65% chance of winning the green jersey. With the rest day today and how he looked yesterday on a pretty hard day, like there was 3 steep climbs on stage 15, and like it was pretty much pinned the entire day, and Jumbo Visma had it pinned on those climbs, a bit easier on Col de la Biche, and Bennett made the time cut, not by the skin of his teeth, but not comfortably either, just nicely in time. And he still looked way better than Sagan in the intermediate sprint. I don't think Bennett's going to miss a time cut, actually. I'd be kind of surprised by that. On stage 16, the intermediate sprint is one that Sagan really needs to go for. There's a Category 4 climb, 13 Ks into the stage. And yeah, I expect to see Bora try and light it up on that climb and to drop Bennett again. There's another climb just before the end of that stage. On stage 17, conversely, there's a little bit of a hill as well, 32 Ks into the stage, and there's an intermediate sprint. It's not a categorized climb though, but yeah, pretty flat before that intermediate sprint. And then stage 18, another mountain stage, a rolly one, the intermediate sprint. Bennett should be okay getting that one, actually. But that might be more of a dangerous day, actually, for him on the time cut. And then stage 19 into Champagnol, there's an intermediate sprint that's after a few rolly climbs as well. So I don't think Bennett's going to miss a time cut. I'd be kind of surprised. They're very generous, but there's these intermediate sprints where Bennett could be dropped on those climbs, and Bora are definitely going to try and drop him on those climbs. And we could see a situation. What I think is going to happen is Sagan I think he'll get Bennett on one of those and drop him, and if he's lucky, take a full 20 on him, but maybe 15. I think Sagan is going to go into Paris in green, and I think he's going to lose green in Paris when he gets dusted off on the Champs-Elysees by Bennett. But yeah, what do you think Bora's just going to rinse and repeat that strategy, Benji, of smashing up those climbs and dropping Bennett?
Well, they are most likely going to do that, but I think it's going to be a fierce battle till the end. As you said, that intermediate sprint on stage 16 has to be for Sagan or Trentin, because Trentin's been the douchebag towards Sagan taking all his points.
But he's close.
He's close. Yeah, he's getting closer and closer. You can't deny that. And he's going to I think Trentin's going to win the intermediate sprint on stage 16. I think he's going to do it once again and just be in the breakaway with Sagan and take those points away. He obviously won't take everything away because Sagan will still most likely become second then if they are in the breakaway, which I think they will, because you've got that fourth cat. They have to do it Bora on this stage. Otherwise, you're pretty much nailing your own coffin there if you're Sagan. If we go towards stage 17, like you said, it's probably going to be an equal battle, 18 as well. But 19 is a stage I see real change happening. I am not sure how Bora is going to do it, though. On paper, it is a stage that, well, the last half is hills. And there's a fourth cat in the middle of the stage leading towards an intermediate sprint slowly but surely. So you are going to see Bora hammer it on that. But they got to make sure Sagan can follow, of course, which is also important. Trentin most likely will be able to follow Sagan, so he might take away points again from Sagan. Trentin won't be coming in the top 2, I think, of this green jersey classification, though. But it might become very close.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't see it happening.
If he's getting in breaks, he's looking good at getting in breaks. If he can sneakily get into one, like he did yesterday, and keep taking these points, what if he gets into 2 of these breaks, takes full 20, and he's already leapfrogged Sagan? Bennett misses time cut. Sure, that's a lot of dominoes that have to fall into place, but I don't think it's out of the question that Trentin wins green, and I think that's why he's been chipping away at trying to get these points. I think it's possible he wins green, but certainly it's a competition. I'm almost more excited about the green jersey competition just because we haven't had a competitive one. We haven't had a competitive one for years, for nearly a decade. So, and Matthews won it, but Sagan wasn't there. So, yeah, I'm super excited about that. Let's just preview Stage 16's profile. We'll obviously do all the other stages in the day before in the podcast, recapping the stage before. Stage 16 from La Tour de Pin to Villard de Lans, another mountain stage straight out of the gate. It starts with 2 climbs, like almost straight out of the neutral zone, like 5Ks at 4%, and then a categorized climb, Cat 4, 3Ks at 6.5%. Bora going to be putting pressure on Bennett there. As we just said, intermediate sprint before the first Cat 2 of the day, Col de Port, 8.3Ks at 6.3%. Category 2 then, straight after that descent, Côte Revel, 7.2Ks at 7.1%. And then undulating valley for about 30Ks, and then a categorized climb, again with bonus seconds on top, but not a mountaintop finish, and a false flat downhill, and then a Cat 3, 2.5Ks, 8.5% or 6.4%, 2.5Ks at 6.4% into Villard de Lans. And it's up to only 1,200 meters. So I'll stay straight up. My pick for the stage is Julien Alaphilippe. It just looks perfect for him because the climbs aren't too hard. 8K is 6%, 7K is 7%, and the last one is only 12Ks at 6%. So I'm picking Alaphilippe. I don't care if it's from a break or from a bunch. It doesn't matter to me. That's my pick.
Okay, I've got a different pick. And I've got 2 scenarios here. When we see Bora go for that intermediate sprint, you might see the Koenig giving up because Bennett's going to be off the back. So on paper, they shouldn't be chasing Bora into that intermediate sprint anymore. I don't think Bennett has the ability to remotely come back if they drop him on that 4th cat towards the group with Sagan, which will probably be ahead of the peloton, because in the peloton, I don't think everybody will care about, well, maybe, because in the peloton you'll keep up attacks because this stage is on paper a breakaway stage to me. Now, if you come to that intermediate sprint point where Sagan takes the points, or Trentin, or whoever, and you've got a gap with the peloton on Bennett, then the Koenig will obviously be in Bennett's group. They're not going to have too many teammates for Alaphilippe there. So let's say he has David Hines left, 1 rider left. And after that, you've got the Col de Port. I don't see Richie Porte attacking there, but the name's beautiful. Nonetheless, I do expect the breakaway to form there. And at that point, Sagan will obviously not be in there anymore because there's no points for him in that stage anymore. From that point onwards, I expect Mikhail Kwiatkowski to jump in the breakaway because he's not going to have to work for Bernal anymore. And I think he's going to win the stage.
I'm fucking mad that you were smart enough to think of that instead of me. That is a delicious pick.
I actually have my bet open on him.
Imagine the first stage of the free Kwiatkowski movement when he's actually been unleashed from the Ineos prison for the first time in a decade, and Ineos rider's been allowed to go for stage win except for Cavendish sprints back in 2012 if Kwiatkowski won. That is very nice. Hershey's obviously got to be mentioned for this stage. Trentin, final climb's probably a bit too hard, but too hard for Trentin. I am liking his shape though in the last week or so. As a general theme for the next 4 stages or 3 mountain stages, I think Benji, correct me if I'm wrong, you also agree that Jumbo Visma are going to be happy that other people take bonus seconds away from them. I think Jumbo Visma are like, okay, we've got this 40-second gap. We don't want to be, if a breakaway goes and takes these bonus seconds, that's fine because they're less bonus seconds that Pogacar could maybe eke out in a sprint against Roglic. Although they did try and go for the stage win yesterday, we think they're going to be a bit more conservative and let that break go in the upcoming stages. It's probably a good idea, to be honest. But yeah, that's our pick for stage 16, or our picks for stage 16. It does look like a breakaway stage, and I think Jumbo Visma should chill and just let people go, to be honest. But that's enough for Tour de France previewing and recapping. We're going to get on to Tirreno Adriatico. Actually, One of the most exciting stages for Tirreno that I want to talk about because of its implications for the World Championships, it's a 10-kilometre time trial, stage 8 of Tirreno, the last stage, and they do it pretty much every year, this exact same individual time trial. It's called the San Benedetto del Tronto ITT 10.1 Ks. It's an out and back, so out and backs are good historically for time comparisons if they go from the same spot each time, because the wind is negated. If there's a headwind out, then you get tailwind back, etc. So they're pretty good for time comparisons, unless one year it's raining, one year it isn't. It's on the coast in San Benedetto del Tronto. The favourites for the stage were Ganna, Dennis, Campanarts, Dowsett, maybe Geraint Thomas. Before the stage, obviously Simon Yates was wearing blue, the leaders in the leaders classification. He had a good margin on Geraint Thomas, and I think we said yesterday in the pod, 40 seconds in a 10K TT, it's a big margin. He had 16 on Micah, but better time trials than Micah, and 50 on Vlasov. So it was really Yates against Thomas was the battle for the first spot. And Masnada and Kelderman actually were 5th and 6th. Kelderman, I think, had a pretty good TT. But the big winner of the day, Benji, is Filippo Ganna. An unbelievable time trial from him. In these short time trials, he's the best in the world at these short time trials on the flat. I don't think that's too controversial. What did you see from Campanarts and Dennis and the other riders? Obviously, Ganna just did a monster, I don't know how many 500-watt performance, but what did you see from Dennis' performance? And I think Campanarts was actually quite a nice performance.
We know when it comes to Campanarts that if he is in a time trial, he gets better the longer it is. And we see that in this time trial as well, because at the second check, at the intermediate check of this time trial, there's only one intermediate check in this time trial. Well, you see that Dennis was second at that point and Campanarts third. So Campanarts was not riding as fast as Dennis. He was not up to his speed yet. It's a bit of a diesel train. That's how I compare Campanarts, because it gets faster the longer it takes. And you see towards the end that he passes Dennis. And that's not because Dennis slowed down. It's because Campanarts just get better over time. Now, if this is a 20-kilometer time trial, I think Campanarts might have been closer to Ganna, because Ganna's best at these short, fiery, hardcore watting in a 10-kilometer time trial. And we can see that from his numbers, an average of 580 watts, which is kind of insane. I don't think I can do that for even 1 kilometer, the average 580. That's going to be pretty tough. And a max of 820, 61 kilometer max, but 57.2 average speed. That is honestly insane. And comparing it to the previous times from previous years, it is beating them hands down. Honestly crazy. And it's admirable because for years I've seen Ganna as a real talent, and he's been slowly but surely breaking through. And it wasn't really in one moment where he was like, bam, he's there. I feel like this is that moment. I feel he just said, well, I'm to be reckoned with on short time trials. Now, I do want to discuss Dennis with you, but maybe in a second here, because I feel like he is not the best time trialist in the world, even though he's a world champion. And it's hard to come by because he prepares for one time trial per year. And every other time trial, he's pretty bad if you look at the numbers compared to all the other time trialists that actually win multiple time trials per year. And if you compare that to 2017, 2018, where he won like most of the time trials he did, it is very different, where he now focuses solely on the World Championships. Now, you can obviously be the West time trialist if you win the World Championships, but it annoys me that he focuses on one time trial. And yeah, I feel like if you're world champion, you got to show that in the other time trials as well. And yeah, therefore, I won't necessarily say that he's not the best time trialist in the world, but I don't like seeing the best time trialist in the world only do it on one time trial.
No, see, I disagree, because I think he is a victim of Grand Tours no longer having long individual time trials. When a time trial is over 30 minutes, Dennis is the best in the world, and we've seen that at World Champs. And we're going to see in Giro. In Giro, sure, I think Ganna probably going to take that really short individual time trial that I think they kick off with, although it's got a bit of a hill in it as well. But yeah, I think Dennis, he won individual time trial, a short one actually, in Tour de Suisse last year. He's obviously back-to-back world champion in the individual time trial. So yeah, I just think if there were longer individual time trials, like what was he going to target in the Tour de France this year? It didn't even. Why would you even take him to the
Yeah,
Tour de
but
France?
how the thing that annoys me about that argument is that you don't have long time trials anymore. It doesn't exist outside of the World Championship. Even this year, the World Championship time trial is 35 kilometers only, which is very different from the 50 kilometers of the past. So, can you be considered the best time trialist in the world if you can't even adapt to the profile?
Yeah, maybe that's a fair point. And I guess the only thing I am surprised by is he's not a big guy, like compared to Ganna, obviously. And I think his power to weight is probably better than Campenaerts. And it is kind of surprising that, like, why, if he was doing the Planche de Belfi time trial, like, we will get to it but later beforehand, but we think Wout van Aert can do a pretty good Planche de Belfi time trial. And Rowan Dennis isn't a very different weight and height to Tom Dumoulin. Correct me, I'm just checking now. Dennis is listed at 72 kilos, 1.82 meters. I guess Tom Dumoulin is a bit lighter and a bit taller, but yeah, why isn't Dennis good at those sort of rolling time or the time trials with the climb in them? He should actually be quite good in them. Um, I'm not sure, but I still think if you're back-to-back world champ, you are the best time trialist in the world. And yeah, I just think I don't know, he's also had a couple of strange years at Bahrain as well, and they didn't have him on a good program. Like, you got to remember, he won that World Championships ITT last year when he literally wasn't on a team. He'd been cut by Bahrain. And whether that was right or wrong or not, he lost that arbitration for the wages, but he's still doing that on his own. I think he was supported by Australian cycling. Just goes to show, like, I don't know how many other riders could have done that. So yeah, I'm interested to see what he does in the Ineos setup. He's only 30 years old, and I'm not being biased because he's Australian or whatever. I don't think he likes me too much, so I'm just saying what I honestly think. I think let's judge him once he's had a full year or so in Ineos. And you're right, this 30k ITT at the World Champs is going to be a really good test between Campenaerts, who is really aero, so he does well in the high speed ones, and Dennis, who's a little bit lighter or maybe than Ganna, who doesn't mind a few hills. Dennis, like at the Yorkshire course, and Ganna, who's just got the most watts in the world. He's crazy. His 4K pursuit
Do
or
you
his 4K time is crazy. So yeah, I'm really keen for that World Champs ITT. It's just a shame Remco won't be there. Obviously, everyone else would have been competing for second if he was. It's a joke.
When it comes to GC, you got Simon Yates that actually kept it up. He kept that jersey, and he did that despite Thomas being actually pretty good in his time trial because Thomas ended up fourth in the time trial. It was really confusing in the end because the GC screen that was on the TV basically said that Thomas won, that Simon Yates won, that they both were first, that Kelderman was twice in the top 10, Thomas as well, he was fourth as well, and then Vlasov was like 8th and 10th. So I had no clue what GC was at that point. That was so hilarious to see. But yeah, Thomas, really good time trial. Honestly, if he goes to the Giro and does these time trials, he's going to take a lot of time on, well, the people that are competing with him. And we saw today that Vlasov's TT is not exactly as good as I thought it was. Did you expect more of Vlasov in time trialing?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I didn't expect more, but it was unfortunate. I was still hoping, okay, maybe he's still kind of okay, but he wasn't. He wasn't that good. And Graham Thomas came 28 seconds behind Ganna, who set a big course record. He was 2 seconds behind Dennis, although Dennis, I think, he like nearly crashed in one of the corners. His bike was, yeah, so, but still 28 seconds behind Ganna, only 8 seconds or 10 seconds behind Campenaerts. 3 guys ahead of him are pure TT specialists and will be competing for World Champs ITT. And Thomas was, yeah, clearly better than every other GC contender. The next best GC contender was Wilco Kelderman, who was another 19, 20 seconds behind Geraint Thomas, and that was a good performance from Kelderman himself. Simon Yates was 22 seconds behind Thomas, so he fended off the ITT attack from Thomas, winning GC overall by 17 seconds. Predictably, Thomas leapfrogged Micah into second, Micah coming third, and Kelderman came fourth, leapfrogging Vlasov and Masnada, who fell down. Woods actually didn't have a great TT either. He lost a spot to James Knox. Brambilla and Jack Haig rounded out the 10 on GC. So pretty good performance from Simon Yates. He's obviously re-signed with Mitchelton Scott for quite a few years on a fair bit of coin, I heard. He obviously won the Vuelta. I feel like the Yates brothers were overrated and now they're underrated. And looking at how Adam is coming to the Tour de France, where they're like, oh, no, just some stage wins. And now Simon Yates winning Tirreno against a pretty strong field for Tirreno. And Thomas is actually looking pretty good. I think he's a favourite for a podium in Giro, and Thomas is looking good. So that's going to be a really fierce battle. Mitchelton and Scott also have a low-key good team for the Giro. Haig was looking way better. He rounded out the 10th on GC. Lucas Hamilton is an improving rider. Who else have they got? Cameron Meyer, Hepburn, Affini. I'm not sure if all those riders are actually going to the Giro. I know Haig is for sure, as probably support for Yates. But yeah, that's looking really good for Giro. We'll do a proper Giro preview when the time comes. But yeah, do you think Simon Yates and Adam Yates will get on the podium in Grand Tours next year? Because I think one of them is a lock to. I don't know which. I'm not sure if it's fair to just pick both of them and one of them to get on the podium. But I think, yeah, probably even both will be contesting for podiums on GC.
I think it depends heavily on the profiles of the Grand Tours. We don't know anything about it. We know that GC specialists look at the profiles before they decide where to go to. Remco Evenepoel said it yesterday evening in an interview that for the Grand Tour he's going to be riding next year, he's going to be focusing solely on the fact whether there are enough time trial kilometers for him to take an advantage there and take those to the mountain stages. So it's clear that GC favorites look at the profiles before they jump into that. In regards to time trials, I think Simon Yates showed today that despite him winning that time trial, I think last year in Paris-Nice, he's not overly consistent in them. And against the people like Thomas that are way more consistent in time trials, it's going to be a tough one. And I think the longer the time trial takes, the closer Yates can actually get. I'm not sure about that, actually, because I don't think he's going to lose as much time in the last 30% of a longer time trial than in the first 30%, which is because we've kind of seen that on the time trials he's done in Grand Tours. So I think his main issue is the fact that he's not as watchy like a Ganna in a 10-kilometer time trial. So I think in longer time trials, he will obviously lose more time than just 20 seconds on Thomas on a long time trial, but he's not going to lose another 20 seconds in the last 30% of that. He's going to lose a bit less towards the end of the time trial because I think that fits him better. But do you feel like Thomas is better at longer time trials or shorter ones? Because I recall that shorter time trials were better for him in the past. He won prologues in multiple occasions, I think.
Yeah, I think proportionally he gains more time than the non-time trial specialist GC riders. And yeah, that they're more relying on their endurance in some of the longer time trials, like that Paris-Nice time trial that Yates won. That was a 30-minute 26 performance. He averaged over 50 k's an hour, and it was 25.5k time trial. It was a very weak time trial field though. Like Pollitt was second, Kwiatkowski third, Egan Bernal came sixth. So like it was a pretty weak time trial field. But yeah, I think Thomas is clearly the best of those guys, of the GC guys in those 10k time trials. Tom Dumoulin he's a better endurance time trials. Okay, but that's it all from Tirreno Adriatico and the Tour de France recap. Trying to keep it under an hour today. Make sure to give us a review or a rating on iTunes podcast, or just let us know on YouTube as well in the comments if you're liking the podcast. We're really enjoying it so far. We're revitalized and refreshed after the rest day. Benji's gone to check out a fountain. I've not done too much, to be honest, because I don't really rest. Money never sleeps. I'm going to be doing the Giro Rosa podcast separately to this, so make sure you check that out as well. We'd really appreciate your support on that. And any final words, Benji?
I'm looking forward to the final week. It's going to be decisive, and it's going to be fun to talk about it in these podcasts. So I'll see you next time. Ciao.